All right, a Fox News alert. The verdict is in. Eddie Ray Ruth, the man who killed American sniper Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield, found guilty of the murders of both men. We knew that he did it. We just didn't know if he was going to get insanity or not. Scott McEwen, who helped Chris Kyle write his story, American Sniper, which is still in the top 5 in the country on bestseller list. Scott, your reaction to this verdict finally coming in 2 years after the incident?
Well, I think the reaction is one of both sorrow as well as relief that finally the Littlefield and Kyle families can have some closure on this subject. I think that just this hanging out there for Taya and her family as well as Chad's family was a huge burden on them, and it's nice that we've got justice and that things are finally done and they can move on with their lives.
You know, we listened to Taya's, we could finally hear what Taya was saying on the stand, and she was saying that when she talked to Chris at the shooting range, he was very tense, and he's usually very happy, and he feels like he's doing a good thing when he brings these soldiers and these Marines out like that. What's your reaction to hearing that? Do you think he knew he was in trouble?
No, you know, it's hard for me to imagine, Brian, and the reason being is because Chris was such a warrior. If he really had an inkling that this guy was any danger to himself or Chad, I just can't imagine a scenario where he would let his guard down, because he'd been through so much war and he'd been through so much in the battles that he had fought in various parts of the world, that it's difficult for me to think that this was anything other than a drop back shot, which is what the verdict and the evidence found, was that he was shot in the back by this guy. So I just don't think that Chris saw a credible threat. If he would have, I think he'd have been ready for the shot. You
know, we see in the movie Chris Kyle's funeral procession, and we see how the town came out and the flags were flying, and it was really broke up Texas. But now with his passing, as we examine his life and we meet his killer, I get the sense that the country's really mourning for the first time.
I think so as well. And remember something, Brian, it wasn't just a town that funeral procession went through. That was 200 miles of freeway that the governor of Texas shut down between Dallas and Austin. And it was the most amazing event that I have ever personally seen or heard of, because there was hundreds of thousands of Texans that were lining that freeway that entire distance in a driving rainstorm just to honor Chris Kyle. And when I saw that, I thought his message is far greater than than just Chris. It's one of huge support from this country and from the Texans for the men and women of our military, and I was extremely proud of Chris and of this country when I saw that tribute to him, and we cannot forget that.
And they showed it not only then, but then they showed it at the box office, and with your book, your co-author of American Sniper, Scott McEwen. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.